knowing not to do it around teachers. We have a culture that's a real problem in this town where there is kids who just say the N-word like it's nothing. They say the R-word like it's nothing. I would listen to kids daily call each other autistic. And I've heard from a lot of people, even just in the comments of the posting of this chat, about a lot of disturbing bullying incidents, some of which are even physical. I was severely bullied. It never got physical, but it was something that I live with and something that I've talked to other youth who have lived through. And it's something we need to address. It's not something to take lightly, and it's not something to make about us. This isn't for performative activism. It's not for white saviorism. It's not for privileged saviorism. It's for really trying to address it because kids are tired. Youth are tired because right now we're dealing with a global pandemic. We've been dealing with the hate for a long time. And it shouldn't be, and this isn't to judge anybody, but it shouldn't be up to kids to have to look at things and look at the hate and say that enough is enough. Because 800 years of racism and homophobia and this kind of stuff that is taught even inherently, because as somebody who has been bullied and who has dedicated my life after to make sure that no other person has to feel this way, it's scary because there are Proud Boy stickers in town, there's Confederate flags, and there's so much hate that it's scary.
Thank you, Tracy. I hate to interrupt you, but I really appreciate that you've shown up with the real true pain of this and you've shared with us the truth of it. And it's really, really hard. And I can see in your heart that you really want to see your town make a change and really address this. So thank you for being brave and starting us off tonight. Thank you, Tracy. Who's next, Susie?
So just a reminder, just a reminder to raise your hand. There's a raise hand feature on Zoom if you'd like to speak, or to type in the comments that you would like to speak. We're just still collecting those here. Would anyone else like to share with the group either your reaction to the incident that happened on January 15th or any issues around equality, inequalities, race, social justice as it pertains to our community? So we have the next person is Barbara McRae. Barbara, if you'd like to unmute yourself, Barbara.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I'm not very good at this. So I'm going to try. But my sister has a daughter, and her daughter is biracial. She's 30 now, but we've gone through a lot. Not in Rhode Island, but in other states too. Like my sister was pulled over because she was driving with somebody that was black when she was in college.
Gallery view.
Can you see me?
No, but I can hear you, Barbara.
Okay.
I can't see you.
I don't know why, but we'll just leave it as is. Pulled over by a white police officer. And
there you are.
There I am. Just make sure that she was okay. Okay, so this has been things that we have had in our family and dealt with. My mother was brought up in the South, so she wouldn't go to my sister's wedding. And so it's been within our family and been hard. But there've been, since I moved to Smithfield in 1990 or 1989, I have been told by others that have been long-term Smithfield residents that it's a racist town. And, you kind of mind your own business and kind of just kind of watch and wonder, what's going on. And I was at the YMCA, which I posted today, and I just want you to know that Janet Ray, who's the president of the YMCA in Smithfield, she's president of the board there. She called me before the meeting tonight, and it was like a half an hour after I posted it, so I was very impressed. The 2 incidents happened at the Y. In the exercise room, I heard the N-word used, and because of my niece, it upset me, and I couldn't believe it, you know. So I went to the pool and swam, and I started crying, and I told the lifeguard, but then I said to myself, I don't want this group of people to hear it from the lifeguard or from I want to go right back in the room. And so I went back in the exercise room afterwards, and there were only 2 there. But I said, I heard this, and it really hurt to hear people in here using that kind of language. And they said, well, we'll have to tell so-and-so, and I can't remember the name, this man.
I'm sorry, Barbara, I have to interrupt you.
That's okay.
But thank you for sharing. Okay. And what I'm hearing in the 2 shares so far is that you feel like it's really pervasive in the community, even in places where you go to exercise where you wouldn't necessarily even expect to hear it.
Exactly.
So, yeah, thank you so much, Barbara.
The next person we had was Dorothy Chin. I don't know, Dorothy, if you still would like to speak, feel free to unmute yourself. Dorothy?
Hi everyone. I think I sent a comment when pictures were first posted, and part of my feeling is that I feel like we covered it up too soon. And I had a long discussion with my husband about this. I am Chinese 100%. We're going through some craziness in the United States right now because of COVID. My husband is white, Scottish, French, and English. So we have a lot of discussions about this. And he said to me, well, they covered it up because they didn't want little kids to go through there. And I feel that my question back to him was, well, why do I have to discuss racism with my children at such a young age? Why aren't we discussing racism at a younger age? Because it's happening at homes. A lot of these biases come from people who influence children. So I think as a person of color, racially passing person of color, that we need to have these discussions at a younger age and more openly. And that was my 2 cents, basically, that I want to put forth to this group.
Thank you, Dorothy.
The next person that would like to speak, it says Jessica. I see you on the screen there. I'm going to unmute. If you could unmute, perfect. There we go.
Yeah, hi. It's Rob. My wife Jessica's here, and she'll probably speak in a second here. I'll keep it quick. I grew up in town here. I've been here my whole life. Went to the high school, left, came back, and recently, we've been here for the last 15, 16 years. And first of all, I want to say thank you for doing this. I think it's great what's going on here. I wish more people were on, but that's what it is. But for me personally, I'm very embarrassed that this happened in our town. And obviously, between the Facebook comments and everything, we've seen that it's become a much more widespread problem. And we've seen it with my kids being bullied in school over the last couple of years. But the one point that I really want to make is, I know the middle school came out with some comments. As a former athlete in town and coaching girls basketball, I'm very disappointed in what the high school has done. Maybe I've missed it, but where is no one's coming out with anything. Where are the sport teams saying, hey, we don't condone this. This is not part of our culture here in town. So that's just what I'd like to say. And I hope that this keeps going on. And I thank you, you guys for doing this, and I appreciate it. I know my wife wants to say something too.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Jessica. So like Rob was saying, so we're parents of a high schooler and a middle schooler. And, just to second what a couple of the other speakers were saying. So, I mean, both from I think the kids' perspective in terms of, you know, the brave woman who spoke a while ago, they are, you know, they're for kids who are getting bullied because they're, you know, being labeled as different for whatever reason that it is. You know, they're really tired of it, and as parents, you know, you get to a certain point where it almost feels kind of overwhelming because, you know, you don't necessarily know what to do to change the whole culture of a community. But I do agree that I think, you know, we sort of need to attack it on all fronts. So, you know, it certainly isn't only through the schools, which, you know, I absolutely agree and think that we need to do a much better job within our school systems. I mean, to have the type of mindset where you start to really influence that change, like you really need to feel it. You need to see it. You need to feel it. It needs to be part of kind of your everyday. But I think it also definitely needs to happen at home. And, you know, I don't know what we can do to try to help shape those behaviors. I mean, I know that that's a much bigger challenge. You know, it's almost easier, I think, to influence the school system than it is maybe, you know, other parents' mindsets at home. But, you know, I have to agree with my husband. It's like, as a community, I think that we were just hoping that we would feel almost a little more support and, you know, kind of, you know, not outrage, but yeah, I guess sort of outrage that that this happened within our community. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And
welcome.
Your husband, I don't remember his name, Rob, I think. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
The next speaker is Cinnamon. Cinnamon's iPad. Sorry, I'm just reading what I see here. So Cinnamon.
No worries.
There you go. Okay.
Hi, I've been in Smithfield for 22 years. My ex-husband was born and raised here. I have 3 sons that's been in the school system. Unfortunately, I have to agree with the couple prior that was speaking. All 3 of my kids have suffered from racism. And can you hear me okay? Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. And so in middle school, it was every last one of them have heard the N-word. And my oldest son, it wasn't really dealt with, so much so that he ended up going to Beacon. My middle son, Aiden, which Mr. Burns and the other vice principal, who's the principal? Principal and stuff. No, he did well. And now I have my youngest one is now in the high school. I don't think that they deal with it head on either. I'm not sure why the superintendent sent out an email to us maybe a month ago and kind of wanted to push it aside and get rid of it right away and not approach it as in the school system, also in the community. That confused me a lot, why it just wanted to be hush hush. I grew up in an all-white community in Rhode Island, and it's still like that. It kind of took me back to the 80s of going into school myself, and I thought we got further. I thought we were a little bit ahead of that, and we're not. So that really bothered me. I'm not sure why we want to sweep it underneath the rug when we know it's alive and well, especially with all the protests and all the awareness out there. We should embrace it, especially as a community. It's so nice to see that people, not just people of color, but other people want to make it right. So in the educational system here in Smithfield, why can't we make it right? Why can't we start doing something? Why can't we move forward instead of sweeping it underneath the rug? Why can't we say, you know what, these young ones, they may be a little immature, but they have open minds and they can learn and we can teach them. And even though they may be learning something at home, you know, if we teach them at home, in school and educate them, give them links on Google, they love the computer, give them things and tools that they can, you know, learn on their own, or, you know, maybe they'll be interested and it can make things better. But sweeping it.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, I didn't mean to speak so long.
That's quite all right. I'm the one who has to keep time. It's hard to interrupt when there's a good flow of thinking, but we want to hear from everyone. So,
yeah.
But I am hearing in the last 4 people who spoke, there's just a lot of disappointment and a hoping that we really step forward and start to really acknowledge it and make this be an impetus for change. So thank you very much for speaking.
You're welcome.
Thank you for sharing. Absolutely. The next person is Shauna, Shawana. Shauna, if you're still interested in speaking, please unmute yourself. I'm going to try to find you also. Let's see. Shauna, I don't know if you're still here. All right. If not, we're going to go to the next person.
I am.
Okay. We can hear you. Perfect.
SHAW. I didn't know if there was another Shauna on here.
SHAUNA. Shauna, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, Shauna, you can go ahead.
I think she's having some technical difficulties. Put her in the waiting room. Okay, so she had some technical difficulties. Hopefully Shauna can come back. We'll work with her on that. The next person is Jeff Angelo.
Hi, and my partner Marcy is here as well. Hi, how you doing? I'm for those who don't know me, I grew up here in Smithfield as well, like a number of people here, and I think this might be a good opportunity to revisit the issue of, there's actually a street named after a ranking KKK member here in Smithfield named Doman Ave. It's right across Georgiaville Pond. They actually used to have Klan rallies there. It's documented. You can look it up. And a lot of long-term residents know about it as well. I think it's a bit embarrassing that I know a number of years ago we looked into this issue and nothing really came of it. It's kind of, like I said, it's very embarrassing to me as a resident that we'd be okay with it. I think doing something about something like a street name that, given its subject, sends a message that we're not okay with this type of thing. So I think now would be a good time to revisit that issue. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dante Cavallaro is next.
Thank you. Thank you so much for putting this forum together. My name is Dante Cavallaro. I'm the priest in charge of St. Thomas Episcopal Church in Greenville. And I just want to share quickly something that's happening in our community, in the parish. On June 2nd, the leaders of the parish voted to make anti-racism work a priority for the community. And so over the last several months, we've been working on the initial steps of that, and starting with educating ourselves. We are a predominantly white community. We have benefited from white privilege, and our faith tradition has been used to prop up the sin of white supremacy. And so beginning by actually educating ourselves on what that means and working to build more relationships in the community so that we can all help make Smithfield a better place. So thank you for doing this. And I just want to say on behalf of the parish, however we as a community can support this work, we are here and interested in helping make Smithfield a safer place for everyone. And to also say anyone, whether you're an Episcopalian or not, is welcome to join us for any of those studies and work. And so we would be glad to have more voices around the table with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Dante. What a great resource for the community. Thank you. Who next, Susie?
We're going to try again. Shauna, are you here? We're getting a little bit of feedback last time.
Sorry, can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, sorry about that. I just wanted to let everyone know that I really appreciate this forum. I think it's wonderful, and I think it's certainly due time for something like this. And it's nice to see the community coming together. I have lived in town for about 18 years. I have a daughter at the middle school in 8th grade, and I'm also the CEO at the Smithfield YMCA. And I did hear Barbara address an issue that occurred at the YMCA. So we do not condone that, and we want to be an integral part of this community in helping to solve some of the hurt that's going on. And be part of the inclusion and diversity. So I just wanted to address it on behalf of my family living here, that we are all for this, and also as a YMCA employee and being in charge of the Y, that is not acceptable. And now that I know about this, I will certainly reach out to Barbara personally, and I apologize that happened, because that is certainly not what the YMCA stands for. So I apologize that happened, and again, the Y is a great part of the community, and we hope to do whatever we can to help this forum and moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Shauna.
The next person is Raymond Duarte. Raymond, I'm gonna, if you could unmute yourself, I will also try to unmute you. There we go.
I don't know, can you hear me? This isn't Ray. It's his daughter.
His daughter, okay, go ahead.
But I'm 55, so I've been here most of my whole life, and actually I had a niece just moved to the area, and I was suggesting she move to Smithfield. I'm embarrassed because her children have a white mom and a black father. And after seeing everything that's going on, our kids watch not only our actions, but our words. No, put that around. Our kids watch our actions, not just our words. So we can tell them a lot about racism and have this discussion, which is a great start. But we have to also watch what we do. It might have to change some of our actions as well. And I forgot my note, hold on. And I don't believe that our students in the high school or the junior high should have to take this on their own. They've done a lot when it comes to school shootings and bullying, and it just we have to take the lead. We shouldn't leave it up to just our kids. And like I said, I agree with many of the other parents, although I myself didn't encounter this, and I've got to say I was shocked because I was naive enough to believe it didn't happen here.
Thank you so much for sharing with us. Who's
Sure.
next, Susie?
Yep, the next person, and just a reminder to everyone, everyone's doing great. Raise hand feature or type in the comments if you'd like to speak. The next person is Alexandra Norton. Alexandra, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Alexandra, perfect.
Hi, so I'm a fellow neighbor. I reside in North Smithfield, and I just wanted to applaud everybody in this forum. As you know, North Smithfield had also in the news 2 years ago, I believe, the Nike resolution issue that received national attention. And I wanted to let everybody know, including the residents, that you are being very brave, and that I commend the community for wanting to address these issues up front, because reconciliation can happen without really processing what happened. And I look forward to this sort of wave of awareness and radical justice that will take place all over Rhode Island and nationally. And I just wanted to commend everybody in this conversation that you are being key role models right now in how to address these sort of issues. And I've been doing a lot of stuff work, and the fact that the community together has come on this and everybody's sharing so openly is of value. And thank you.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you. Okay, Susie.
Sure, Phyllis. Phyllis, yep, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Phyllis Faziano. I've been a resident of Smithfield for 27 years. I am a congregant of St. Thomas Episcopal Church, working closely with Dante. Mm-hmm. And my children have been raised in this community. They have acknowledged to me that they have seen racism in this town. I grew up in North Smithfield. I know firsthand of the racism that exists. And I think my point that I want to make is that we have to be louder. The fact that there are Confederate flags that are at all shown in this town is a sin. And we have to be taking a stand. We need to be our voices have to be loud, that this is not to be tolerated, that this is not who we are. And if it is who we are, then we need to change. And you know, we have, you know, whether it's with banners or marches, education, all of it, we have to take the stand, because the fact that we're having to have this forum is a sin. That this, in this privileged community, that this environment exists. And my heart goes out to anyone on these boards, on this forum, that have been a victim. I am so, on behalf of the town, I'm so sorry.
Thank you very much, Phyllis, for your really heartfelt share. Thank you.
So the next person is Councilman David Takoyan. And I just want to remind everyone that if you are typing, there are lots of comments and there's lots of dialogue in the chat. We appreciate that. There are also resources being shared from our community leaders, so feel free. We'll leave the chat open for a while, even a little bit after the event ends, so folks can go back and scroll for some of those resources. But I'm going to ask, if someone shares something in the chat, please indicate whether you'd like us to share that for you. Some people are not comfortable speaking, or are you just sharing that so we can, we can see that. The town takes all of your comments seriously, and we will capture all of those and hopefully respond to those at an appropriate time. But if you'd like an answer or would like us to share your comment, please indicate that. We have folks from the school, the police department, and others who can share resources this evening as well. Councilman Takoyan?
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you for everybody who participating in this. I've heard a few comments, and Zimmerman, the iPad, I'm sorry, don't remember your first name, but it struck me, and actually the last caller, about education. And the reason I bring that up is, as a former Rhode Island State Trooper.
I'm sorry, Cinnamon is my name. No worries.
Okay, thank you. Your comments struck me as a former Rhode Island State Trooper and the police chief in the North Providence. Education, and I know Joe Reddish. I've worked with Cedric Hutley and also with Kobe, and early on in the early 90s, when we went through the police academy, there was no such thing as teaching against bias-based policing. There was no such thing about mental health training, and you saw things evolve legislatively. And what did they do? They educated law enforcement. And I'm Armenian. People think I'm Italian, but I'm Armenian. My grandparents were the victim of the Armenian genocide. People were just killed because of their nationality. Well, I saw in Rhode Island and across the country, they developed a curriculum for genocide, teaching people about genocide and how wrong it is, and they're educating. So your comment struck me. Maybe it's time to lobby our General Assembly to, maybe there needs to be a curriculum in schools. I think it's time to, educate our youth about how wrong this is. So I really think education is the motivator, and as elected and public officials, we should be pushing that. But really, yes, I'm embarrassed that this happened in Smithfield, but I try to look at the glass half full, and I'm proud that we're taking some type of action in a forum to put it together. So I applaud each and every one of you for doing this. I mean, I've been a victim on my own, nationality, but I think education is the way to go. And I don't want to take any more time, but I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So the next person, Barbara, I do see your hand raised again. We don't have too many in line, so I will let you speak a second time. But before that, Asabe Paloma, you could go first.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to appreciate the forum having a space to engage with this topic and talk with members of the community. I'm not a lifelong Smithfield resident. I'm in fact newly relocated here. with my husband and my two children who are in the local elementary school. And I want to say that while I appreciate the conversations that we're talking about today, which is how to stop the perpetration of racism and how to stop the escalation and how do we recognize and mitigate the psychological harm that it has on all of us, not just those of us who are racialized as Black or Asian or other minoritized identities in the US. I also think it's important to think about and be intentional about how do we strengthen our community norms in order to prevent racism in the future. And I know that for a lot of us who are members, longtime members of the community, maybe this is not emblematic of the community you know, but as a Black American woman raised in the US with a family, a husband who is African American and children who are African American, I have to tell you that this experience is symptomatic of Black experience in the United States. So this is not atypical. And so I think we have to first recognize that. And then also think about what kind of community we want to be and the sense of belonging that we want to inculcate so that other members of the community who are not longtime residents, who are minoritized, feel that this is also where they belong. So I do applaud education, but I also really want us to think about the active strategies that we're going to take going forward, because this would just continue to happen, is the foundation and the root of our country.
Thank you so very much for those really important points. Susie?
Sure. The next person, Barbara, go ahead. Barbara McRae. Yeah. I think. Okay.
Thank you very much, because I didn't quite finish and I want to say it all. I love the Y in Smithfield. I do. But there's another incident that happened also. I came in to the Y after the election results came in and said something. I kind of wondered what would be the reaction a little bit, because I always felt from what I had heard that Smithfield was kind of a racist community. And this one woman, it got down to nitty gritty. It was like scary, really, because we were waiting for the door to be unlocked to go into the pool area. And first we were talking a little bit about why masks don't need to be worn and all that kind of stuff. And it got down to her saying that I wish somebody would take a machine gun down to DC when the Black Lives Matter group was down there and just machine gun them down. And I was shocked. I go, not all people, even in Rhode Island, were part of the breaking into the mall and stuff like that. I said, you can't say that about everybody. But I didn't want to really get into a heated discussion with her over it, because I didn't really think that I would have any success. And so I just left it at that. The door was unlocked and I went and swam. But I did relay these incidents to the woman at the Y before this meeting. But I just wanted to say I'm out there to the community, that adults in this community, we've got some problems, and so it's heartbreaking. And that's it.
Thank you so much. And it sounds like, I don't remember the name of the woman who represents the Y, who's the CEO of the Y, but it sounds like they really want to hear from you, Barbara. So I'm glad you spoke up. Thank you.
The next person is Jane Ramos. Jane, go ahead and unmute.
Hi. I just wanted to share kind of an interesting perspective I have of the town of Smithfield. My family has lived here in Smithfield for 65 years. I've been here almost all of my 55 years. I attended Smithfield High School too. And I've been teaching in Smithfield for 33 years. Obviously, I'm white, but my husband is Black, and I give him a lot of credit for moving here with me about 23 years ago. He had lived in Pawtucket prior to that, and he's from Cape Verde. We have two sons that have gone through the Smithfield school systems. I would say I think it's very difficult to sum up comments about race in Smithfield, because it's complicated. it's historical, it's deep, it's personal, and the things that happened, the event that has caused this forum is, yes, upsetting, but I have to say not surprising. I hope that I'm a role model to the students I teach and to others in our community. Just looking at me, nobody knows the experiences I've had with my family or my experiences working with talent development at URI. At least in this forum, I'm able to share who I am, who my family is, and I'm willing to help in any way that I can. It just seems like it's a tough thing to overcome, but hey, I'll do whatever it takes.
Thank you so much. Great.
Thank you. Kate Gorman. Kate Gorman, you can go ahead and click unmute. There we go.
Okay. Sorry, I can't figure out where I am in this screen, but okay, I guess I'm there now. I am also, my picture went away and then it went the whole screen. So I don't know what happened.
We can see you. I just, excuse me, I want to remind folks, if you'd like to, there's a speaker view and a gallery view. Right in the right-hand corner, there's about 9 boxes. It says view, and if you'd like to see the speaker, you can click on speaker view, but we can hear you and see you, Kate. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right. I used to live in North Smithfield, and my child went through the schools there, and we have always gone to St. Thomas Episcopal Church in Greenville. And so when we decided to downsize, we bought a condo in Smithfield. And I have worked in the schools in Central Falls and Pawtucket, and going into the schools in Woonsocket also, and doing counseling. And I could not believe it when I heard about what happened. And I spoke with Kim, and I said that I wanted to come to this forum. What happened that really got me upset was even before this about the graffiti. I went to some yard sales in town back in the summer, and I ended up getting in my car and leaving after going to 2 streets in this neighborhood in Smithfield, because people were, I don't want to wear a mask. And then one person said, oh, this Black Lives Matter thing that's going on. And then I remember there was another day where we're driving on Smith Street, Putnam Pike, and there goes a rally, a parade of vehicles, and there's an American flag and a Confederate flag flying in the wind in the back of the truck. And it was like things that we've seen on the TV. And I said, I can't believe it. It's here in Smithfield. I've also been involved with the reconciliation book studies at St. Thomas. And I highly recommend if anyone would like to join. And I have to say that when I worked in Central Falls, Pawtucket, Woonsocket, I prefer working in environments where there are people of color. They appreciate what you do. They try to not treat people differently that don't look.
Sorry, Kate, I need to interrupt you, but I've really appreciated your share. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is great. The next person is Jeremy Pierre. Jeremy. feel free to unmute. Perfect.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Basically, all I would like to ask is, I just want to know what, I see all these comments about, education and moving into education. I just want to know what the town's plan is for education. That's it. So I just have a question, I guess. I don't have a story to tell.
Yeah, I'll just say more holistically, tonight's forum is to do a lot of listening. We do have members of the school department, the administration, and some teachers and folks here listening. We're doing a lot of listening today, and we'll put together an action plan and next steps probably after the forum. But at the end, we do have local experts as well as our town and school administration will be able to answer or comment at the end. Can certainly share what we're already doing. But for next steps or, there will be next steps and future goals that will come after this forum, after we listen today. That's a valid question though. Great. The next person is Kate Zimmerman, and then Jane and Alexandra, you still have your hands up. I'm not sure if you left your hands up. Just remember to take your hands down on that raise hand feature. Okay, perfect. So Kate Zimmerman.
Hi, so this story is not necessarily mine. It's a story that I have a close friend that I've coached with for many years. I'm not a person of color, and this gentleman is. And some time ago, he had shared with me, and almost in a joking manner, but it was serious, that, make sure you keep your phone on you because I'm going to go running. And if anybody calls the cops on me because they see a black man running down the street, you'll have my back. And I sort of laughed it off and thought to myself, nobody's going to call the cops on you. Why would anybody call the cops on you? This gentleman is a fantastic human. And yet then some months later, with Black Lives Matters, it dawned on me that I just didn't understand. And so I called him to apologize. And it was at that point he thanked me for calling him and acknowledging it, but also saying, at that point I understood that you didn't get it. But at the same time, I really love you because you don't get it, right? You're not a racist person, yet you just don't understand. And I'm glad that we're doing this, but I struggle with, you have the conversations with your children, you try to teach them that everybody is special and that you shouldn't judge people based on anything, their skin color, or if they decide what their sexual orientation is, or if they have a disability. Yet I'm not sure how to move that forward. So I'm glad that we're doing this, but I think there's just a lot of us that are not people of color that we don't get it. We should acknowledge that we don't get it, and we should care about those people to help.
Thank you so much, Kate. Really good points. Who's up next, Susie?
Sure. Alexandra Norton is going to be sharing again, so we're going to try to stick to a time limit. But Alexandra, go ahead.
Hi, yes. So this was kind of regarding to the couple participants in the past in terms of action plans. So you actually answered my question. Like, I didn't realize that this forum was just about listening and affirming what happened. But I too am very curious about what communities can do in terms of action plans. So one of the things that we've discussed as a result of the Nike resolution was that we wanted to have some of the boards in town attend racial equity training. So one of the trainings that I have personally attended was the groundwater training by the Equity Institute, which is housed in Woonsocket, I think, once a year. And for me, that was, it was a very good eye-opener for me as a white woman, because I thought I understood what racism was, not until I attended this meeting. So I guess my question was, it's good to recognize what's happening and for people to share because that's affirming, but I'm curious to see what the town will be doing moving forward. Outside of education and the school, it really is an education in terms of, all of the community members.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
thank you.
This is great, Alexandra. So just for everyone, the good news is, and we'll hear from folks at the end, folks like Kobe Dennis has offered to do a bystander training for our community. And Amy Davidson from the YWCA. I'd like her to talk about that toward the end again. So if you can hang with us, there's a number of trainings that they're offering to our community as well after this. And we feel the town, I know, and I'll ask Superintendent Paolucci from the schools to speak in just one moment. We plan to offer these free workshops, maybe 4 times a year for the community at large. But for this evening, I know for the town council anyway, we are doing a lot of listening before we put our action plan together. There have been ideas of getting our youth council involved in some of the solutions. We've talked about maybe a local committee or commission on prejudice and bias. And so we have a lot of ideas. We're just not prepared to share those this evening. We're hoping a lot of what is being shared tonight will inform a lot of the work we do in the future. But the good news is our gears are turning, and we have folks in the Rhode Island community, like the individuals you met earlier, that are willing to help, which is very exciting. Superintendent Paolucci, if you wanted to unmute.
Okay, thank you. So first, I'd like to thank everyone for sharing their thoughts on this issue. It is extremely important for our community and for our schools. And as everyone spoke, what I tried to do is listen and try to write down just some ideas about what I observed, because I didn't live in Smithfield my whole life. I grew up in Providence and lived in North Kingstown, moved to Maine, Massachusetts, and then came back to Rhode Island. So what have I observed being in Smithfield? And then I jotted down a few ideas too about what did I hear today that really sparked my mind about things that could happen in the future, and then how do we keep this conversation going? So when I first came to Smithfield, there were a group of students who expressed their hurt about things that were happening at the high school, and the administration was trying to research what could we do about it, because it is kind of a huge task to think about how could we solve this problem. So so I had a friend who was part of the Anti-Defamation League, and we engaged them, and the approach is really unique in that it takes students and makes them aware of bias and racism around them, and then they can move forward and be a leader in that area. So we moved forward in those areas and did a few other things as well, but it's certainly not enough. So I've been thinking about this issue of the graffiti, and it certainly makes me angry. But what makes me even more angry is the hurt that individual students have from other students bullying. This is a problem the schools can't solve on their own, so we're really happy to see the town moving forward on some actions that can be taken town-wide. And we are also going to be moving to look at our policies, look at all our practices, and try to address this in a way that is multifaceted instead of just one approach. And so I have a number of ideas, and it's not really time for that so much, because I think we need to get together at the end and come up with an action plan. But I just want to thank everybody and just say we are listening for sure.
That's fantastic. And just as a person who does this sort of community work, I think that we've ended up in this situation in general, not just in Smithfield, but in our state and in our country, because we often identify a problem and we try to quickly find a solution, and it might not be the solution that actually is going to be the impetus for the healing. And so I really applaud what you're doing in Smithfield. I think taking a pause and taking a really big inventory in the context of the pandemic, in the context of a huge, division around whether racism is okay. We haven't really decided as a country whether or not racism is okay. And you guys are showing up here and saying in Smithfield, racism is not okay, and we're going to do something about it. So I wanted to applaud that effort and ask you to just sort of be a little patient. The solutions will be coming, and I trust your leadership team to come up with the solutions. Go ahead, Susie. Who's our next person?
Stephen Girdings. You can go ahead and unmute.
Hello. Hi. So my wife spoke earlier. She's Dorothy Chin with Mixed House
household, and we've been dealing with this, trying to explain a lot of this stuff to our kids. We have one daughter who is who's in high school. She hasn't been to school yet this year, and the other one just went back to Oak County. We kept the younger one out of school, not only because of COVID, but also because at the end of the last year, she had to deal with several kids blaming her for the COVID virus because she's Chinese. We heard about some of it from her. We heard some of it from her bus driver. I don't recall. I don't know if the parents of the children that did this were notified. And I don't blame the children at that age. They don't know any better. But I do wonder. I do wonder how do we know that this is actually being dealt with? Obviously, we don't want to put the kids in the same room and make them work together or anything like that. But how do we know that the principals and the teachers and everybody are actually dealing with this sort of situation when it arises? And what are they doing? And how do we deal with it if you find out that the parents just don't care? And I don't know that happened or didn't happen in this case, but I do know, you come across some people that just, they don't care about this. How are we working to get through to their kids to make our kids' lives safer?
So I'm going to ask, we haven't gotten many questions this evening, and I know that's a question we also got prior to this evening. I don't know if that's best answered by Superintendent Paolucci or the Chief of Police in terms of how we address these types of issues.
Okay.
But I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but Judy? Okay.
Speak briefly about, so first of all, we don't always know about them right away. So we always appreciate when people let us know. When we find out that students inappropriately address situations like that and have that type of speech aimed at somebody, we act and we take a teaching stance. So our first goal is to teach the kid, this is not right, this is why it's not right, and how can we resolve this? How could we, to repair the relationship that obviously was broken by this poor speech. So we work on that, and we also give consequences. I mean, there has to be consequences for actions. We do have to maintain confidentiality about consequences, but that doesn't mean we can't communicate with those who reported it to us that we did address the issue and we were moving forward, and we definitely should be doing that. And if you don't hear from it, definitely give me a call.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Susie, are there other folks lined up?
Not that I know of, but at this time, what I would like to do, if that's okay, Wendy, there were comments shared in the chat that I think
absolutely
want to be shared. So bear with me because there are lots of them.
Great.
So just give me 1 second. Let's see. So again, lots of resources for folks. And actually, Julie Dorsey, that would be great. Julie Dorsey, if you'd like to speak, and I'll get my thoughts together on the comments that were shared. Perfect.
Okay, great. Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Julie Dorsey. This is my husband, Stan, sitting next to me. We have a little bit of a unique perspective because I am the principal of La Perche Elementary, as well as, a mom in town. We have 3 children, and our youngest right now is at the middle school, and then we have one at high school and one who's off at college. And so I was just writing down a few things, Stephen. I think one of the hardest things, like you said, how do we get kids to understand this when their parents are obviously teaching them that? Right. So we know we had a president who was teaching that exact same thing, right, calling it the Chinese virus. So that makes it really difficult as educators to stand up against that. And as a principal, I try to be really respectful of, the kids bring in their parents' opinions and they bring in their parents' values. And I really try to be respectful of that while also sharing my family. So at La Perche, all the kids have heard about how Mr. Dorsey and Mrs. Dorsey couldn't have been married. Can you believe that? We couldn't have gotten married. And they just can't believe it when they see us. 2 of my kids went to La Perche, so I would bring them up, or, other kids of all different colors, and just say, which color is the best? And they'd all kind of look at me like I was crazy until we all understood that none of them were, and that we're all beautiful. And so I think I have a great perspective that way to just share my own family and share my own family's story. I know for my daughter at the high school level, I do want to compliment the high school that she's now a sophomore in college down in Florida State, but she had lots of opportunities. She's high-spirited, just like her mother. And so she's really passionate, and she went head to head with so many kids there who might, maybe support the other side, right? Support some of these racist values. And the high school teachers really provided the platform for the kids to be able to have these discussions, which I just so appreciated that, because she would come home fired up and she would say, Mom and Dad, can you believe this kid thinks this or thinks that? And, as best we can, we teach our children to love and appreciate all. We know that other people are not teaching that. And I love that Kobe is going to do a bystander, webinar for us, or teaching us, because I think that's one of the most important things. Like Barbara was saying, she didn't really know how to respond to it. She didn't know how to respond to that woman who was saying, I want to take a machine gun and shoot all the Black Lives Matter people, and how important all of us it is to just know how to stand up, share our experiences. And look, there's 119 of us on here. So if we each talk to one neighbor in Smithfield, 2 neighbors in Smithfield, invite people into your home, stand up and have those conversations. I'm super spirited, we'll say. My husband has been wonderful he's much more thoughtful about the conversation. Obviously he's, the African-American man who has experienced things that I haven't in my life, and he can think and just really be thoughtful about it and say, I wonder why they think that. I'd love to have a conversation with them. I'd love to speak with them, where I'm like, what? Especially having my own kids. Who was it? I think Zimmerman said, having your own kids walking down the street and having someone judge them simply because of the color of their skin, absolutely breaks my heart. And it is something that we have to change. And this is the first piece, and I know you're going to cut me off, Wendy. This is the first piece, but that incident, like other people have said, oh, the incident, but like Jane Ramos said, she wasn't surprised, right? That's like some high school kids totally not acting appropriately, right? We know they weren't acting appropriately, but we have Confederate flags all over Smithfield. We have Trump signs all over Smithfield. And you can be Republican. Like, I have Republicans in my family for sure. I have, Democrats in my family, Republicans. But when you support, when it became so racist and so anti and you continue to support that, as a community, we have to look past that and get to know our neighbors and just educate each other. I don't know if you want to add anything. And we'll start the 2 minutes over. So.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
Can I say one more thing? I'm sorry.
Sure. Yes.
Because as a principal, I will say, and I think all of you know that as parents, that no kids are born hating anyone, right? We know that they are not. So it's what they either are taught at home or what they learn from peers or see in the news. And everybody has a responsibility for all of these isms, right? From the media, from the news, from values in a community. We just all have a responsibility, but we can change it together if we work together and care about each other and support the schools, support the family, support the town, that we really can, make it happen. So that's it. Thank you.
If you don't mind, Wendy, I'd like to share something. Actually, I'll call on myself. Speaking of, we all have a part to play. I think when I was first elected to the town council, I'll never forget, and I don't know that many folks know this, but I'm Latina, right? So I'm a Latina council president in a predominantly white community. There was an individual who came before the council who wanted to open a new business in town, and he was Hispanic, a restaurant. And I'll never forget that someone from the audience, a community member that shows up pretty frequently to our council meetings, said, well, are you going to check his papers before we let him open here? And I was horrified, and I spoke out, right? So I think the big thing is when we hear these things, the graffiti was done by kids, but adults are saying these things publicly, right? And when we hear somebody say something, we have to call them out on it. And I remember saying I won't tolerate that, in the council chamber or at all. Flash forward, I want to say about a year later, that same individual, we were talking about the soccer fields, and he said, well, they don't, I heard a couple of parents not speaking English. They must not be from our community or our town. So, I think, it's for folks who are from communities, where people of color, LGBTQ, we're in the minority, right? Here in Smithfield, and in other places across the state, it is difficult. And I think it's all about tolerance, respect, and calling out folks when they are saying things so hurtful publicly. But I just wanted to share those instances that I experienced just hearing that at town council meetings was very disappointing. So it's not just happening with kids, it's happening obviously with adults, and we have to call that out. I'm gonna call next on Elizabeth Tucker. She was next. Elizabeth, feel free to unmute. And just so everyone knows, a little bit of a time check. Wendy, how much time do we want to give for our, just remind me, for our local?
So we had said we were going to give the last 30 minutes for the folks that checked in at the beginning to check in again with us and reflect back what they heard. And then I also wanted to invite you to invite other leaders in the community who may want to step forward. So I'm thinking we have about 10 minutes to continue to take comments from the community, and then also have you read the comments that you wanted to share, and then we can kind of switch gears into let's get some summarizing from the community leaders.
Okay, so that sounds great. Elizabeth.
Yes, can everyone hear me okay? Okay. I don't know if I'm on.
We can hear
you. Great. So I guess I just wanted to say that, I'm very proud that the town is having this forum, and for all of us to share our stories, share our thoughts. I did not grow up in Smithfield, but I grew up in Greenville, which is as a part of it, and technically over the line, Gloucester, so right on the border. I recently moved my family into Smithfield, and honestly, because I wanted more diversity for my daughter. My daughter is biracial, and it's disconcerting that to hear of these things that are happening in the schools. She goes currently to a local preschool, and there is no evidence of this whatsoever there. So again, I go back to the point, I believe it starts at a very young age. We need to educate our children. We need to make sure that they are understanding to have these conversations early on, to know that it's not about the color of their skin, and to continue to believe that as they grow up. And I think, my partner and I, we feel strongly, it's great that we're all here and we're on this call talking about this. However, it's those who are not on this call, how do we get this message to them? Because the kids, unfortunately, that did this act on January 15th, they're learning it from somewhere and they're hearing it elsewhere. So how do we get that message to them? Did you want to say anything? Okay. So, sorry, my partner Jim just wanted to say something as well.
Thank you all for being here. So it's sorry to double dip, but it's really, one of the things that, as Elizabeth just alluded to, is just, it's great that we're having this forum, and someone else mentioned this as well. But, it's almost that we're not really, the people that need to be in the room are not here, and they're never going to be here. And I think that's one of the most important things that we have to realize. As a person of color, I grew up in East Greenwich, and, it's like one of those things where I grew up with this, and I'm just going to talk very frank. I grew up with this mess, and I've been dealing with this my entire life. And it gets to a point where you almost get to it's just like the rage turns to just ambivalence, and then ambivalence just turns to apathy, and then it's just that this is just the way that it is. And from my experience, like I've said before, I've experienced these types of things before. I've been on these forums since I was a little kid, all through school, and all of this. And the one thing that I think that we all have to realize is that we need to have concrete commitments and no more abstract support. That's the most important thing. Now, I know that everyone's here and everyone's here for and what it's for. That is great. But, it's, again, the people that are out there are just calling all of us that are sitting here liberals, snowflakes, all those things and all those terms, that's what we have to reel against. Go to Fox News and look at any of the comments that are in any of the things that deal with race or anything like that, and that's what you're really reeling against. Because that echo chamber is just going to just keep sitting there making more and more and more. And it's just going to embolden. So, that's really just want to just kind of just say that. And again, thanks everyone for being here. But I take to task again, what are the action items that are going to come out of this? Not just for the school committee, which is, or the board, or all of that, but just really just what concrete commitments are going to happen. Because really what always seems to happen is that teachers, and someone mentioned this before, teachers hear this all day long in the schoolroom, in the classrooms. They hear it. I used to teach, and I heard it all day long. The kids aren't slick. None of us were. We all remember. Come on. But we all think that we are. But really, that's really what it comes down to. When the teachers hear it, the teachers know what's going to happen. But when it's Billy and Susie, and they know that their parents are going to be like, if I have to go up against them and then all of those, and they're really going to come down on me, I'm not going to take this because it's not worth my job, because those, and I hate to use the term, but those Karens are going to be the ones that are going to be sitting there, like, making it really hard for those people to actually have accountability. Yeah. So it's really just kind of fire that all the way up the chain. So that's really kind of where the things are actually.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
That's it. Thank you for the time.
Yeah. Thanks. You want to see action. I think we all do. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, Susie.
Yep. I just want to ask if people could be respectful in the chat. We're starting to get into political parties and things, and that's really not what the forum is about tonight. So if we could refrain from those types of comments, I think we'd all be better off that way. So the next person is Lily. Lily has been waiting very patiently, and there are folks who'd like to speak again. I'm not sure we'll have an opportunity for that, but please keep your hand up and we'll try our best. Lily?
Lily, Susie, this is Carol. I'm her mother.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you can hear me. I just wanted to say two quick things. That I have lived in Smithfield for 79 years. So evidently I've got everybody beat here. I always considered Smithfield a charming and lovely place. It's not perfect, never has been, and you know what? It's never gonna be. But I don't like to hear all this negativism. All I have heard tonight is negativism. The other thing I would like to say is I agree with those that are talking about education. Absolutely. And on this particular subject, I have always educated myself. I don't bother anymore because I'm too old and I want to have fun. But anyway, the first book I'd like to recommend, I hope you all have your pens and papers ready, is The Nature of Prejudice by Gordon Allport. Gordon Allport, The Nature of Prejudice. And the next book that I would like to recommend that is absolutely wonderful is My Grandfather's Son by Clarence Thomas. And I think if we start reading these books and educating ourselves, we might be a little bit happier and nicer people and a little more positive. All right, that's it for me.
Thank you, Carol.
Lisa Sullivan. Go ahead, Lisa.
Hi. My comment is more related to how I think we really need to address the concept of racism more directly with people that truly don't believe it exists. And so one of the things that, I'm just going to use this as an example, but this week I just read an article that talked about how an African-American couple was selling their home, and their white friend offered to go in and basically stage the home with her family photos, so that when the home was appraised, when the home was appraised, it would come in at a higher value. And the irony of the whole situation was, it came in at over $50,000 more when they had it reappraised, with the pictures of the white family in it. And then it went on in the article to explain socially how racism impacts various people by saying the more diverse that a neighborhood becomes, the lower the property values are. And that is part of the system. And I think that when you actually discuss and acknowledge those realities, and you bring that concrete evidence to light, and you discuss how that impacts people on a real basis, on a real level, it's easier for people to not, I mean, maybe if they can see it that way, it will help to illustrate what racism really is from a systemic standpoint, because I don't believe enough people believe that there's systemic racism or even understand what that means. And in Smithfield, we in particular are suffering from that. And I think it's, where ignorance is bliss. I mean, yeah, there's wonderful things about Smithfield. I've lived here for 20 plus years. My husband grew up here. It's a great town for he and I. But my experience as a white woman is very unique and different from someone who has a biracial child or who is African American and moving into the neighborhood. And you can't stand in someone else's shoes unless you actively try to listen and engage and understand. And many people aren't willing to do that. It pushes you out of your comfort level. It's tiring. It exhausts you. It's intimidating. It's embarrassing. It's all these things. But, when you look at a cold, hard fact of like property values going down with diversity, right, that really brings it to a head. And and those are the types of things that, I'll be honest, I was brought up racist. Racist as hell.
Thank you, Lisa, for sharing. Appreciate that. Thank you.
So, Wendy, at this point, it is 7:30, and everyone that wanted to speak has, except for a few folks who have their hand raised that have already spoken. So, I will honor that we were asking folks to speak once. If we have time at the end, certainly we can do that. But I want to give some voice to the folks that made some comments. I'm going to read these.
Yes.
It should only take me about 3 or 4 minutes. I speak fast, and then we can go ahead. So just a few things here. Someone commented this conversation needs to happen with not only the adults, but younger kids from elementary to high school. In order to address racism, we need to have this conversation with young children. Please listen to people's stories and take them seriously. We can have a safer, better town, especially for kids. There are so many more people in this town who will not be able to feel safe until we know peers, regardless of the community they're from, won't get hurt for being different. We have lots of resources shared here from Joe Reddish and others. Resource for the Rhode Island Commission on Prejudice and Bias. There's a website here, calloutprejudiceri.org. So it's a website, calloutprejudiceri.org is a great resource. Someone said, I would love to hear from sports teams, for any coaches that might be here tonight, or the school department. I hear a lot of negative chatter from some of our middle and high school athletes. Negative chatter among our athletes. The Anti-Defamation League, thank you, also shared a resource, a link to a resource guide for school administrators when responding to bias incidents. I'm sure our school we already have a partnership with the Anti-Defamation League, so that's something I'm sure we're looking at. So someone shared, even if you just walk the halls of elementary, middle school, and high school, there are not a lot of visuals about inclusion and no tolerance for bullying. Exactly. We need to send the right message as a community, and right now it's not being felt. Whether it's race or the LGBTQ community, we need to have the message be loud and clear that we are a supportive community and we will not tolerate racism or bigotry. Reverend Dante Cavallaro from St. Thomas Church in town also said, please be in touch. He shared his email address to know more about the work they're doing. Someone else said, I think it's important for people in our community to realize that it is happening here. We've talked about that. Educating folks to recognize hate symbols by extremist groups is also important. Thank you, Peggy from Anti-Defamation. There's actually a database of hate symbols. That's www.adl.org. It's the Anti-Defamation League hate symbols. If you'd like to educate your children on what those symbols look like or the community at large, that's a great resource. Someone asked a question. This is for the schools probably. Are there suggestions on resources for educating young children ages 6 to 10 on these types of issues? Someone else shared, privilege is the key word. I would like Smithfield to address all the isms, whether it's classism, sexism, racism, gender bias. Hate has no home here. Just a few other things. Again, Kobe from the YWCA, thank you. He's happy to collaborate. They have a bystander training we've talked about. Someone else asked for me to share their comment. More education is needed, especially around racism and intolerance. It has always been a side note. It's always been a side note or addressed when something happens. We need to be talking about this all the time. And then how can we as a community foster accountability? How can we invite people who have not gotten past fragility or privilege, recognizing to be accountable? Learn about microaggressions. And then someone said, for white people like myself looking to do the work of anti-racism, I highly recommend Robin DiAngelo's book, White Fragility. That's absolutely a book that I would recommend as well. And then someone else said that I agree, I'm a clinical social worker and have participated in a great deal of trainings that have helped raise awareness about my own privilege and biases. It comes down to educating individuals about these topics and how do we gain insight and awareness. So those are just some of the comments. I hope I've been able to capture all of those. Again, I'm going to pass this over to Wendy at this time. And thank you to those of you who have shared. Again, we hope this is just the beginning of this dialogue.
Yeah, sure. And thank you, all of you who shared and stayed with us. We still have 109 people in the room, which is awesome. I saw that it went up to 120 at one point. Actually, I'd like to put it back to you for a minute, Susie. I heard that you mentioned that there was a police chief in the room. I'd like to hear some reflections from the police chief, if he is open to doing that. And then if there are other leaders that you might want to pick out before I call on the other folks. Is the police chief still in the room?
The police chief is still in the room. Can you hear me?
I can't hear you.
Hi, Chief St. Sever, Smithfield Police Department. First, I just want to say that I'm glad that I joined the forum this evening. It was quite eye-opening. 3 points. First, I would just point out that it was my goal during this forum to listen, to be the police department's ears, and to get the pulse of the community members on the forum. And I can assure you that I heard what everyone had to say loud and clear. My second point, I just want to make it clear that the police are very much a part of this community. Will continue to be very much a part of this community. And we certainly will be part of the town's response to the issues surrounding racism. And the third point that I would make is that starting Monday, actually, and this goes to education and the role that the police department can play in education, beginning on Monday, when the students return to school from vacation, the DARE officer and the school resource officer are going to return to the schools. They've been away from the schools at my direction, really, as a... Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, they've been away from the school for a little while, mostly COVID related. But I think we're over the hump and we're ready to get back into the school. And more specifically, the DARE officer has been instructed, although there's a standard curriculum when it comes to the DARE program, which deals with anti-violence and saying no to drugs and bullying, those sort of things. But I've given him instruction to pay extra time on issues of inclusion and diversity and the issues of racism in the town of Smithfield, particularly at the elementary school level and the middle school level.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to put you on the spot. So, Susie, is there anyone else that we should...
sorry. Yes, I'm not sure. Judy or Sarah, is there any other closing remarks? And if not, that's okay. We just want to make sure.
I could just briefly say, I talked a little bit about the idea that we're going to review a lot of our policies and practices, and I've been collecting also kind of action plans from other communities that have gone through this to see what are the different types of things that we can think of to do something more comprehensive than just doing a Band-Aid approach. And so on Monday night at the school committee meeting, we're reviewing our non-discrimination policy. We're making it more broad. It shouldn't be just about what are we going to do if there's an act of discrimination. It should be about how are we going to make our schools a place of equity and a place where we want all our children to succeed. And so we're going to be reviewing that policy and talking about next steps at that school committee meeting as part of our policy review. Policies aren't just a piece of paper. They're a great opportunity for school committee to have a really important conversation. And so that's one step that we're taking, but we're going to move forward with a lot more. And a lot of the work that we're going to do too, we want to do with our town partners, because this isn't a problem that the school can address by itself in no way, but it's something that together I think we can make Smithfield a more welcoming and equitable community to live in.
Thank you.
Wendy, Town Manager Rossi would like to say something, and
I was just going to ask him if he wanted to say something.
Absolutely.
I think you're muted.
Yep, no, I was just making sure Susie unmuted and...
Okay.
Here we go.
Perfect. No, thank you everyone so much for participating tonight. The turnout has been fantastic. I can't say enough about how important it was to hear firsthand and actually getting a true understanding of what our residents are going through, different experiences over the years. It's important for us all to know.
We're having a little trouble hearing you, Randy.
These things forward with the town council, with myself, and all of our leaders in town, working collaboratively with the school department, and putting an action plan together and really moving the town forward. So this is, as we've said multiple times on this is the first step of many things. It's getting the feedback from people that know the most, of course, all of our residents, and we appreciate that. And that's the only way that we know everything that's going on to be able to know. This is just a start. Everything will be fully out there. I know some people were asking in the chat about having community participation. That totally will. There's nothing that's going to be done in a silo. And I just thank everyone. I thank our panelists, and I thank my council for everything that they've done along my side through this, getting this issue brought to the forefront and handled properly. So thank you all.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for initiating this and making the call to the Commission on Prejudice and Bias to help make this happen. So I would like to go get back to our panelists from the beginning and give you all 2 or 3 minutes to just do a quick summary. And then Susie, I'd like to let you wrap up tonight after we've had a chance to do that. So I'm actually going to jump in with the Special Assistant to the Attorney General, Rob Johnson. I'd love to hear from you what your reflections are from tonight.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, promise that won't fall again. My reflections are, I'm very encouraged, extremely encouraged just to hear the several people that spoke tonight and just the sentiment. I know there were opinions both positive and some maybe a little bit more negative about, where we are, where we can go. And just, as a as wearing two hats. Obviously, I'm a prosecutor with the Attorney General's office, but as a lifelong Rhode Island resident, I'm definitely encouraged to know that this community, just like many others, is committed to change. I don't think, wearing my Rhode Islander hat, I don't think that discussing change in this way is wasted breath. I think these are the conversations that have to happen. In terms of my hat as a prosecutor, I think that we here at the office are doing what we can, to help in the community. And as I say that as part of the Commission on Prejudice and Bias and our work with, the police academies to try and do what training we can to point out and get the recruits to identify bias and biases they have going in, so they're more equipped to deal with a diverse public and be educated about that. And I also mentioned initially that I'm part of the Civil Rights Unit, and I just wanted to mention that unit because several people that spoke tonight were talking about, what can we do going forward. And I think part of being in the Civil Rights Unit is we are reaching out and making ourselves known through our website, which is www.riag.ri.gov. And if that's too hard to remember, just simply Google Rhode Island Attorney General. It'll be the first result that comes up. If you go to that website, what you're able to do is essentially file a complaint based on three separate areas. We prosecute crimes that are lend themselves to a hate crime enhancement. We also deal with civil rights complaints. If somebody is essentially interfering with a citizen's constitutional rights, the civil rights complaint is a way to address that. It has to deal with housing, education, things like that somebody feels that their rights are being infringed upon. And lastly, we also deal with police misconduct and also excessive force. So if you go to that website again, that's www.riag.ri.gov. You go right there, there's a civil rights tab. You click that, and it's basically very self-explanatory in being able to file complaints, make us aware, and then we can work with the proper authorities, police departments, and other bodies to get these things heard. And the reason we do this is to protect community. It's what this whole forum has been about tonight, been about community, to make sure that these communities reflect a body of people working together and not just individual cells of people. I think that's what we're trying to do, our part at the office, and I think that's a lot of what tonight was about. So thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Peggy Shukar, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, from the Anti-Defamation League of New England. If you could just take 2 minutes to share your thoughts.
I was just so moved by how people came, bearing their souls tonight. And I want to assure you that I was listening and you were heard. And from where I sit with the Anti-Defamation League, you've heard folks talk about the AWOD program, A World of Difference, which is a small program in your schools which try to give student leaders the voice, the words to disrupt hate and be leaders among their peers to call it out. But more broadly, at ADL, we sort of talk about grouping this work in three categories that and I heard each one tonight, which is why I'm repeating it. One is we say speak up, make your voice heard, which is what everybody came to do tonight. Name the hate and interrupt it when you hear it. And that's sort of the goal and the road, this community is on together. Report the incidents, and you've heard many people speak about the ways you can make these incidents known and sort of elevate people's consciousness about it, which again is a first step in trying to interrupt it. Sharing facts, share the information, the data, the reports, the situations that are happening, and as reported in the chat today and through such moving testimony. Make the truth known, shout down rumors and tropes and lies that you hear, and that's part of dismantling all of this hate that seems to infect not just Smithfield, but it's everywhere, and show strength as this community clearly has done by having continuing conversations of understanding, which is something that I also heard loud and clear, that this is a community that's committed to continuing the conversation, and we'll be working together to find ways to be allies for others and stand up for each other, which is really the essential foundation for making the community a stronger, better, and more inclusive one. So thank you for the chance to hear, and thank you everyone for making your voices heard.
Thank you, Peggy. Next, I'd like to invite Amy Davidson from the YWCA to share.
Thank you, Wendy, and thank you everyone who shared your thoughts in the chat and over the course of the discussion this evening. It was a very robust, honest, and raw discussion. I could tell as people were getting a little fatigued in the second half of the second hour, the chat was blowing up a little bit more tellingly. The YWCA of Rhode Island stands ready to support the town of Smithfield in developing and implementing an action plan, if I can borrow the language of Mrs. Paloma, to strengthen community norms and to really address a culture, particularly in the schools, but also, as was shared by a number of residents in the streets and between neighbors, of racial hostility and a sort of complicity with that hostility, an implicit complicity as folks really want to challenge it but don't feel empowered, prepared, or safe in challenging their neighbors and fellow community members in public spaces on these issues as they arise. I like to divide up action plans into what I refer to as the low-hanging fruit, and then the mid to long-term goals, that fruit that's higher up on the tree that is ripe for picking but is harder to reach. I think some low-hanging fruits that you have right now are to return to this issue that a community member brought up with the renaming of the Dome and Avenue. The community coming together and addressing this community's history of overt and organized white supremacy with an active KKK faction, which the legacy remains in the names of some of the streets in the town, would be a very interesting and symbolic way of kind of kicking off an initiative of actions within the community that really demonstrate a commitment to making changes, both symbolic and systemic and structural, that really signal that this community is reckoning with its past as a means of moving into a more inclusive future, a future of belonging, even beyond inclusion. And then also addressing the space at the scenic trail where the incident that we're all here talking about and reflecting on happened. So looking at a picture of that trail, it's a beautiful green space with a highway running over it. Studies have shown that murals discourage vandalism and tagging. A way to promote a restorative healing experience within that space, if the town is empowered to do so, would be to organize possibly the youth in the creation of a mural for those pillars that were tagged. Right now they're just kind of covered up with gray paint, and I know that a lot of the community members, particularly Black community members and LGBTQ community members who were targeted in the hate speech that was put up in that space, are thinking and very aware of what is just below that thin layer of gray paint. And so thinking about a way that you can not just cover up, but really address that this was a space that was kind of laid siege with hate speech. If you are empowered, I know that the highway is technically state property. So if you can paint those pillars, that's one of the low-hanging fruits that the town could really come together in, and you could engage the youth and also local artists in beautifying that space, and that would further reduce the possibility of future tagging in that space. But again, I say the YWCA has a host of programs. A lot of folks are really talking about education, and education is key, but education is not the stopping point. Education is the stepping off point. We get educated and then we act on our education. So we have a number of programs specific to understanding structural racism.
So Amy, I hate to interrupt you. I want to give our other gentleman a chance.
Big talker.
If you could put some information in the chat if people want to get in touch with you, because I'm guessing people do. I know I do. So let people know how to reach out to you. Now I have to ask two powerhouse gentlemen to split like 7 minutes. So I am going to ask, please, Kobe Dennis from the YMCA to give us some brilliant and concise wrapping up. And then we're going to move on to Joe Reddish as soon as Kobe is finished. And then I'll let Susie have some closing comments. So Kobe.
I'll be extremely brief. I'm talking to, I just want to talk directly to the people of Smithfield that are on the call. I applaud you all for taking this step forward and standing up. But I also want to point out the fact that, I heard plenty of you speaking about the needs and what needs to be done to combat hate and hate speech. And we talked a lot about the police and the school and town council and YMCAs. But I'm here to tell you all that you are looking at the image of the person that should be helping. And that's that image you're seeing in that square, and that's you. So it starts with you. It starts at your homes. It starts on your kitchen tables. And that's where the conversation has to continue right after this Zoom for dinner or snack. It's kind of late, so maybe a snack. But that's where the conversation has to continue. And then from there, that's where we get into the bystander training, because a lot of people will say, well, how do we do that? And that's why we need training on how to teach you how to talk about this with yourself, others, community members. And that leads into councils, that leads to community groups, that leads to protests, marches, all that. And that's what needs to happen in the town of Smithfield. The one thing, and I'll be very honest, the one thing that I didn't enjoy about the conversation tonight is the fact that folks are saying they're kind of shocked that this happened in their town. Well, you shouldn't be shocked, because it's been happening for a long time. These kids just happened to put it out there. So we need to start by saying this has been happening for a long time. We need to say that to ourselves. This has been happening for a long time. And we are just finally going to get to the point where we are tired of it and we're going to address it. So thank you all. I'm here to help. I love the great town of Smithfield, and I am definitely going to be here to help free of charge anytime. So please reach out to me at kdennis@gpymca.org. Have a great night.
Thank you, Kobe. And now, Joe Reddish, could you please give us some wisdom?
I'll try my best to give a little wisdom. First and foremost, I want to commend the Smithfield community, its leadership, the community members that joined this evening on your thoughtfulness and comments and sharing. As Kobe and the other leaders have shared, the most important step is what we did tonight and what all of you did tonight. And that is to acknowledge that a change needs to take place. Hence our website name of the commission, which is calloutprejudicerhodeisland.org. It is important for each of us to embrace and acknowledge and call out prejudice situations or racist situations, hold each other accountable for those activities that take place. I heard the phrase negative chatter. I don't think of it as negative chatter. I think it is positive opportunity for making a change. When there's conversation, that's when change takes place. There is a quote by Audre Lorde that says, "It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences." And I think tonight was a first step in that process. And it's going to be a process, an ongoing activity that takes place. The other quote I'll share with you is from Kenji Miyazawa, and that is, "We must embrace pain and burn it as fuel for our journey." I think tonight we identified a lot of pain, but you also took that pain and turned it into positive energy to now take the next steps. The last thing I will share, it is not just a journey for your town leaders, your law enforcement. It is, as Kobe just shared, it is each of us as we look in the mirror. We are part of that process. So in the morning when we wake up, remember that each one of us is a pebble in that pond to start the process of educating each other on how we can go forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, and Susie, would you like to have some concluding remarks as we wrap up just in time?
Sure. Again, on behalf of the town council, my colleagues on the town council, we've hosted this forum this evening. We just want to thank you, Wendy, very much for leading us through this important conversation. We want to thank all of our esteemed experts and panelists from all across Rhode Island. We are appreciative of your time this evening, but more importantly, your offer to assist us moving forward. These workshops are going to be wonderful and eye-opening and make a significant impact, not just on town leaders, but our town residents who can participate free of charge. These organizations have offered these free of charge to our community. So rest assured, we will schedule those in a timely manner and get those out as soon as we can. I also want to acknowledge, again, thank Kim Zegelmeyer again for her efforts, her creation of the Smithfield Anti-Hate Coalition on Facebook. She's created a dialogue where people feel comfortable in sharing. We just ask that everyone obviously continues to remain respectful of each other. We all come from different viewpoints and have different things affect us differently. We are all, of different walks of life, and we just want to respect one another when we're sharing those things that are hurtful, hateful, but also the positive things happening. We want to acknowledge the things that are happening in the schools and are happening with the police department and are happening within our community. We certainly want to acknowledge the good work being done. And thank you to all of the town leaders, the police department, and others for addressing this incident, but also thinking about ways we can prevent it from happening and move together as a community. I know there are folks that did not get a chance to speak this evening. Please feel free to email myself. My email address is on the town website, any of the council members or the town manager. We are very easy to talk to. We are here to serve you. I know that our school leaders also are approachable, easy to talk to, and are here to serve you as well. So please feel comfortable to bring these things to our attention, because if we don't know, we cannot address them, right? So a lot of questions have come out, how do we address these? But if we don't know they're happening, and when we do know they're happening, we need to know if we're addressing them appropriately. But as the superintendent shared, it's just not one issue, it's a multitude of issues, and we have to look at them holistically and in the best way possible. So if anybody did not have a chance to speak this evening, please feel free to reach out at any time. Lastly, we are going to compile the entire chat because there's a lot of great information shared. We're going to group those, get some of those, get some of that information out to the appropriate parties, the school department, the police department, and we will work as a community to review those comments and those resources, and we'll find the best way to share those with the public, those resources. So thank you all again for taking part in our forum this evening. Have a great evening, stay safe, and treat each other respectfully. And I will officially adjourn the forum now. I need a motion to adjourn from a council member, actually. If I could have a council member.
So moved.
Motion is made and second, and all in favor?
Aye.
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 Have a good evening, everyone.